How does someone go from being crowned the future of the WNBA to not even making the All-Star reserves? Just a few months ago, Angel Reese was everywhere, headlining magazine covers, trending on every platform, and being hailed as the next big thing in women's basketball. Forbes didn't just feature her, they branded her the face of the league, placing her name right beside Aja Wilson's. Sports anchors called her a rising force. Fans debated whether she deserved Rookie of the Year. Her presence felt undeniable. But when the All-Star ballots were released, silence. No starter spot, no reserve, not even a mention on the media's top selections. This wasn't just a snub, it was a wake-up call. Because while the headlines were loud, the voting numbers told a quieter but far more honest truth. Reese didn't just miss the cut, she was 13th, behind lesser-known names, behind players who barely get airtime, and perhaps most glaringly, miles behind Caitlin Clark, the one rookie she was constantly compared to. So the question is, what happened? Why did the it girl of the WNBA vanish when it mattered most? And what does this massive drop-off say about the power of hype, when the game itself doesn't back it up? Let's dig in, because this story isn't just about Angel Reese. It's about what happens when media momentum collides with cold, hard numbers. If there was ever a moment that stripped away the media buzz and exposed what fans really think, it was the All-Star vote. Angel Reese didn't just fall short, she plummeted. Out of all the eligible players in the WNBA, she ranked 13th in fan voting with just over 173,000 votes. That might sound respectable until you compare it to Caitlin Clark. Clark racked up more than 600,000 votes, nearly triple Reese's total. And here's the kicker. Reese had been actively campaigning, posting, asking her massive social media following to vote. Clark barely said a word. The message was loud and clear. This wasn't just about who was trending, it was about who was earning it. The scoreboard didn't lie, and neither did the fan base. Despite being pushed as a top-tier star, Reese couldn't even crack the top 10. Meanwhile, her biggest competitor was dominating the conversation and the ballots without breaking a sweat. But it didn't stop there. The numbers go deeper, and they're even more telling when you zoom in. Because while Reese may have had the fame, the next section reveals she didn't have the game. For someone branded the future of women's basketball, Angel Reese's stat line tells a very different story. She's averaging 11.3 points per game, 11.9 rebounds, and shooting just 38.5% from the field. And that last number, her field goal percentage, is especially concerning for someone who plays primarily inside the paint. At 6'3", she's expected to dominate around the rim. But instead, her shooting has regressed. And even her rebounding, supposed to be her strongest skill, is down from last season. In isolation, those numbers might seem passable. But when you're marketed as a generational talent, every missed shot, every quiet night gets magnified. That spotlight doesn't just brighten your highlights, it exposes your flaws. And Reese's game, for all the media fanfare, hasn't evolved the way fans expected. Even her supporters have noticed. She's scoring fewer points, grabbing fewer boards, and struggling to finish plays she was once known for. That's not growth, it's a step backward. And voters, fans, players, and media aren't blind to it. Because while social media can inflate a narrative, box scores don't lie. And when you put her stats side by side with someone like Caitlin Clark, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. But what about the media? Weren't they the ones who hyped her up in the first place? That's where things get even more revealing. Here's where things take a sharp turn, because the All-Star voting isn't just about fan popularity. Half of it comes from the people who know the game best: players, coaches, and the media. And when the media ballots dropped, the verdict was brutal. Not a single major sports media figure included Angel Reese in their All-Star picks. Not one. Meanwhile, Aja Wilson, unanimous. Front-court stars like Breanna Stewart, Alyssa Thomas, and Napheesa Collier made nearly every list. Even rising names with less media coverage but stronger performances secured their spots. Angel Reese, despite being constantly talked about online, wasn't even in the conversation. And that silence said everything. These are the same media outlets that once pushed Reese as the face of the league. Forbes called her a game changer. USA Today ran headlines about her stardom. Sports Illustrated covered her rise with glowing praise. But when it came time to put names on a ballot, when it actually counted, they left her off. That's not just a snub. That's a shift in perception, a silent admission that maybe the hype got ahead of the reality. And fans noticed. If even the media isn't backing the story they helped build, what does that say about what's really happening behind the scenes? And it wasn't just the media. Angel Reese's massive social following couldn't save her either. If all-star rosters were based on followers and likes, Angel Reese would have been a lock. She's one of the most followed players in the league. Her name trends constantly. She's built a powerful personal brand, positioned herself as the self-proclaimed Bayou Barbie, and engaged with fans more than almost any other player. She even launched a full-on campaign, posting online and encouraging her supporters to flood the ballot box. But despite all that noise, the votes didn't come. And that's the harsh truth. For all the attention, all the memes, and all the marketing, social media couldn't bridge the gap between fame and performance. Because being famous online doesn't automatically mean fans believe you're elite on the court. And when people tuned in to watch Angel Reese play, the product didn't match the promise. Missed layups, forced shots, games where she disappeared in key moments. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark said almost nothing, focused on basketball, and let her numbers speak for themselves. The result? Over 600,000 votes, triple Reese's total. This is the reality of professional sports in 2025. Clout gets you noticed, but consistency gets you respect. And when Reese didn't make the All-Star team, it became clear. The audience that once celebrated her online had moved on, quietly, decisively. But this wasn't just a story of social media overreach. It's what happens when a narrative begins to collapse in real time. At one point, Angel Reese wasn't just part of the conversation, she was the conversation. Every WNBA promo, every ESPN debate, every headline seemed to orbit her name. The media had built a narrative, Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark, a rivalry that would define the next era of women's basketball. Reese was portrayed as gritty, confident, unapologetic, the perfect foil to Clark's surgical precision and deep-range dominance. But when the All-Star numbers dropped, that carefully crafted storyline started to unravel. Because this wasn't just about Reese missing out. Paige Buakers, another highly marketed name often compared to Clark, didn't even crack the top 5 in voting. Suddenly, it became obvious. Fans weren't buying the narrative anymore. They were watching the games, tracking the stats, and voting based on what they saw, not what the headlines told them. Reese was supposed to be neck and neck with Clark. That's what the media insisted. But the results didn't just show a gap, they showed a chasm. Clark was leading the league in attention, in impact, and in votes. Reese, barely clinging to relevance on the ballot sheet. And just like that, the story shifted. The hype engine stalled, the spotlight dimmed. And the media, once obsessed with pushing Reese into superstardom, suddenly had a new problem. The numbers they couldn't spin. But what happened next was even more revealing, because the very media that built her up began quietly backing away. Not long ago, Angel Reese was the media's golden ticket. Forbes, USA Today, Sports Illustrated, they all rushed to crown her as a generational icon. Her face was splashed across headlines, her quotes framed as sound bites. And every highlight play, no matter how minor, was turned into viral content. She was everywhere, until she wasn't. When the All-Star ballots exposed the gap between her popularity and her production, something strange happened. The coverage went quiet. Those same outlets that couldn't stop talking about her suddenly had nothing to say. No more glowing features, no more league promo hype, no more declarations of her being the face of the WNBA. Even Megan Hall of USA Today, who had once praised Reese for elevating the league, left her off her All-Star ballot completely. That wasn't just an omission, that was a statement. The media didn't issue apologies or retractions. They didn't admit the hype had been premature. They just moved on, subtly, silently, like they were hoping no one would notice. But fans noticed, and so did other players. Because when someone's media machine suddenly powers down, it sends a message louder than any article. We don't believe in this anymore. And if the people who built the narrative are backing away, what does that mean for Angel Reese moving forward? Angel Reese was marketed like a superstar. She talked like one. She was followed like one. But when it came time to deliver like one, on the court, under pressure, with votes on the line, the results didn't follow. And that's where the gap became impossible to ignore. You can be 6'3", have a highlight reel, and sell jerseys. But if you're shooting under 40% and missing easy looks night after night, fans start asking hard questions, especially when you've made it clear that you want to be the face of the league. With every missed layup, with every quiet fourth quarter, that image the media sold starts to crack. And when expectations are sky high, even a decent performance can look like a letdown. The truth is, Angel Reese has built an empire on visibility, but not on dominance. Her campaign for All-Star votes didn't ignite momentum. It exposed a ceiling. The very people who once believed she was the next great WNBA force started seeing her differently. Not because of who she is, but because of what she hasn't done. And at this level, that's enough to cost you everything. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark didn't ask for the spotlight. She earned it. She's leading her team, hitting logo threes, and changing the way people watch women's basketball. Reese is still searching for that consistency, the kind that makes fans cheer without needing a campaign. Because once the gap between fame and game is exposed, it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle. And now that the truth is out, the question becomes, can Angel Reese survive this moment? Or is this the beginning of the end? This is the moment where everything changes for Angel Reese. The media silence, that's not just background noise, it's a warning. The very outlets that once carried her on their backs are now shifting focus. The spotlight that once burned so brightly has dimmed. And now all that's left is performance. No filters, no slogans, no viral clips, just basketball. And right now, the basketball isn't doing her any favors. This all-star snub wasn't a fluke. It wasn't politics. It wasn't even bias. It was the clearest signal yet that hype doesn't last without results. The league didn't turn its back on Angel Reese. It simply looked elsewhere, toward players who are producing, winning, improving, night after night. Players like Aja Wilson, Alyssa Thomas, Nneka Ogwumike, even fellow rookies like Caitlin Clark and Rickea Jackson. They didn't need to beg for recognition. They earned it. And that's the harsh reality. Reese isn't being singled out. She's being measured, fairly, and she's falling short. So what happens now? Does she take this as motivation and come back stronger, leaner, sharper, more efficient? Or does she become a cautionary tale of what happens when fame outpaces performance? The ball's in her court, literally. But in the WNBA, the game moves fast. Fans are quick to move on. The media is already watching the next rising star. And if Angel Reese doesn't level up, and soon, she may find herself not just left off all-star ballots, but out of the conversation entirely. Because in this league, attention is earned, and no amount of hashtags or headlines can change what's written on the stat sheet. So, has the league moved on? Or is Angel Reese about to rewrite the narrative? Let us know what you think. Will she bounce back, or is the all-star dream already over?